We are passing around cards in case any of you have some burning questions you'd like us to entertain asking the candidates. Nancy Gallion
Right here.
and Melinda Wright, please hold your hands up. If you need a card, they can give you one. If you have a question, they can also collect it. Please do it quietly. You can hold your hand up for both. And here's a question.
Thank you.
I see many faces in the audience who are league members, but for those of you who are not, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the league. The League of Women Voters of Orange County is a nonpartisan, volunteer, grassroots organization. We work very hard to protect and expand voting rights for everyone, to make sure that everyone is represented in our democracy. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy through education and advocacy, such as what we're doing tonight. We neither support nor oppose political candidates nor parties, but we do take positions on issues that are important to us that we have vetted.
Lee, into the mic, please. Closer. Thank you.
The League is known as a trusted source of information for voters. And if you have not already done so, I urge you to check out vote411.org. That is the League site where you can get trusted voter, candidate, and election information in one stop, in one easy way. So do check that out if you have not done so already. I've had many people come up to me and say, I use that all the time and I love it. So August 20th is just, believe it or not, 14 days away. And voting by mail and early voting has already started, so we are in that speedy moment where the election is almost upon us. Tonight you will hear from 3 candidates who are on the ballot to fill the seat to be vacated by Emily Montilla, and they are Joy Goff-Marcil, Joel Antonio Montilla, and Kelly Semrad. Stephen Leary, unfortunately, was not able to join us tonight as he had a previous commitment. To introduce the candidates and moderate tonight's forum, we are so pleased to have Beth Casa from the Winter Park Voice. Beth is a Central Florida native and a longtime journalist who has devoted her career to local news. Many qualities define Beth as an exceptional journalist, but to me, 2 stand out. One is that she's an overachiever, so you know she's always reaching for perfection. And 2 is her strong telling of the stories of people and organizations who help define this region. She has been putting these skills to great use since she became the editor of the Winter Park Voice in 2023. Beth spent 20 years at the Orlando Sentinel, where she wrote a popular column and covered topics such as politics, of course, education, the courts, business, and local government. She's also appeared on local and national TV. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Beth Casa. As I destroy her notes.
All right, so thank you so much, Lee, and it's really a pleasure to be here with everyone tonight. Thank you to Westminster and the League for hosting this, and of course to the candidates. I will say a quick note, I know a lot of people think journalists have a very adversarial relationship with politicians and candidates for office, and that's often true, but I've been doing this a long time. I've covered a lot of local races, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for you all. I've seen firsthand through many local elections what it takes to run for public office, the work and effort that you all put in. So thank you so much. And I also always give a plug for local elections. My heart is local news. That August 20th ballot is what will decide how our local schools are run, how our local elections are run, who's deciding and making budget decisions on the county level when it comes to transportation, parks, roads, basic essential needs here in Central Florida. So these are just really important topics. So a couple rules, we're gonna start with some opening statements in just a moment so you can hear directly from the candidates. And I just wanna reiterate again, the white cards that are available, if anyone has any questions. Don't worry, I did come, yes, okay, so they're waving here and I see over here, so you don't have to get up, just wave your hand, somebody will give you a card, and when you're done writing your question, just give a little wave again and they'll pick it up for you and we'll get those going. But not to worry, I came armed with many questions. So, we're going to start first with some introductions, and I understand that there was an order decided, so I think everyone drew cards. So the first person we're going to hear from is Dr. Kelly Semrad with a 2-minute opening statement.
My name is Dr. Kelly Semrad, and I am a candidate for Orange County District 5 Commissioner. Thank you so much for being here this evening. To the League, thank you so much. Beth, Winter Park Boys, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about my platform. I'm a UCF Tourism and Hospitality professor, and I specialize in tourism economies. And one of the things that I've really focused hard on is making sure that our local tourism economy works for the people. And by working for the people, I mean that we have we have the lowest wages in the nation right now. And I'm looking at improving the amount of jobs that we have that come into our region that have better paying jobs. I'm also looking at our tourism development tax revenue and diversifying it, as well as seeking additional forms of tourism tax to help bolster the infrastructure that we have available that impacts our quality of life, like our roads, like mass transit, like safe streets. So I'm advocating for those things. I'm also the vice chair of Save Orange County. And at Save Orange County, we fight against urban sprawl, and I've been a huge advocate for that through the years. I sued the county for urban sprawl and how fiscally irresponsible it is, how it breaks our roads, crowds our school, and increases crime. I won in court, and a year later, I'm still fighting that same battle. So I'm looking at replugging our tourism economy. I have the expertise to do it. I'm also looking at responsible growth that puts residents first. I'm also the District 5 Resident of the Year for Orange County. Yes, that's better. I serve as a tourism ambassador in the Caribbean region and looking at replugging and helping with their tourism economy. I'm endorsed by many local leaders, including most of our Orange County delegation. That includes Carlos Guillermo Smith, Victor Torres, Ana Escamani, Maxwell Frost, also a lot of the local labor unions as well. I'm a people person, and I'm running for Orange County District 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goff-Marcil.
Hi, I'm Joy Goff-Marcil, running for Orange County Commission District 5 as well. I'm from this district. This is my hometown. My husband and I chose to raise our 3 children here. One of my kids are here right now, supporting me. I served on the Maitland City Council for 2 terms, and then in the Florida House for 2 terms. And while on the City Council, I worked on developments to make sure that they were not intruding into our wetlands, because that was something that was happening in Maitland. There was a lot of development going on. Our residents did want a small downtown, so that was something that I was a big part of helping make a downtown where we could have walkability, because that's very important to our residents to be able to live, work, and play in our downtown. It's been very successful. Then in the Florida House, I worked on supporting home rule, because as you know, the state government has taken a lot of time to preempt our local decisions. So I worked hard on that, and also on the environmental issues that came up a lot in the Florida House. That was something that I took a leadership role in because a lot of my colleagues were having to deal with social issues that were also a problem at the state level. So I am now running for Orange County, where I'm hoping to do more of the same work that I did at the Maitland level and at the state level. I am the only candidate that has experience at both the city and the state level, and I'm hoping to bring that to the county level. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. My name is Joel Antonio Montilla, and I am an attorney by trade. I grew up in the district. I practice estate planning and asset protection for many folks like those in the room here today. I also have, I'm a practicing attorney. I practice law. I do estate planning and asset protection. I also have my Medicare insurance license, and I've lived in the district for over 37 years. I grew up around here. I've seen firsthand the communities that we seek to serve. My family and I are the community that we'll be speaking about mostly tonight. I've lived in many of the neighborhoods throughout the district, so I have deep and personal knowledge as it relates to the issues that we'll be talking to here today. I am the voice that we will be representing today. I reflect the community, as you may know or may not know. District 5 is very diverse. It's across the entire northeast region of Orange County, and so there's a lot of needs. In this area, you do have the municipalities such as Winter Park, Maitland, and the city of Orlando. My campaign is about collaboration with those municipalities and giving the voice to the East Orange folks in the area that I grew up in. I aim to champion people and the community, and to enforce that and to amplify the voices that have come, because a lot of the issues that we'll be talking here tonight are not issues that develop overnight. They've been ongoing for a while, and so we are stepping up to serve in this capacity. And it would be an honor to serve you as your next county commissioner. I just want to give a quick credit to my beautiful wife and my 3-month-old son, that without this, as Beth had mentioned, what it takes to do this, for us it takes something, but for our loved ones it also takes over. It would be an honor and a pleasure to serve you as your next county commissioner.
With some questions. And for those in the back who can't see, we do have an official timekeeper thanks to the league, and so thank you, Carolyn, for keeping us on track. She will give everyone 1.5 minutes to answer the first few questions here. So wanted to start out, and you don't have to take the whole 1.5 minutes. So this first question is, in November, a lot of voters here probably already know you will be asked whether or not to protect the rural areas in Orange County by limiting development within those designated rural boundaries. All of you, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, have said you support this concept and effort in various public forums we've already had so far. But could you each tell us a little bit about why you support this amendment and what you want voters to understand about it, what it means? And so we started with Kelly, so if I'm hope this is going to be my hardest thing of tonight, is doing the order correctly. I think we start with Representative Goff-Marcil first.
Thank you for that question. This has been an issue that's been around for years, and especially in Seminole County, where I was representing for 4 years when I was in the Florida House. And I was very proud of how Seminole County handled the issue and was able to protect the rural boundary. I used that as an example when I would speak on the floor about how we need to protect our rural boundary and our environmental lands. We have so many sensitive wetlands and we keep developing unchecked. So I am very supportive of this rural boundary. I'm excited that it's going to be on our ballot, and I hope all of you spread the word to vote yes for the rural boundary. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I know that's a topic of discussion. I'm all about the will of the people and the work that the county commission did and through the CRC. I think you have to honor the issues that the voters have brought to the table. At the same token, as far as what the voters need to know, is that the boundary reflects a relationship between the government and private ownership of property. And so I'm going to vote in favor of it. We work for many years on a lot of issues as it relates to the environment. But I remain vigilant to ensure that government overreach is not something that we have to deal with. As this goes down, as a lawyer, you have to understand too that some of these things end up in the courtroom. They're very costly and expensive. So I'm all about protecting the interest of the voters and the desire of the voters. I think they need to understand truly what is at stake when it comes to the government-private relationship. And so I want to create a balance there as well. But I'll be voting in favor in honor of the community and what they decided. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. So I'm the initiator of the rural boundary. Last July 2023, I submitted it to the Charter Review Commission, which is the group of people that's appointed by our Board of County Commissioners, to look at amending our county constitution. The reason why I submitted it is, as Vice Chair of Save Orange County, and as a citizen who sued the county for urban sprawl, I am so acutely aware of the damage that urban sprawl brings to all of us. Those of us that are living in the rural area, but also those of us that are living in the urban area. We talk about increased taxes, lack of affordable housing, broken roads, crowded schools, increased crime, polluted water. These are all of the reasons that I sued the county and we won in court. Orange County still ignored that we won. And so we took it to the next level where we said, if you're not going to listen to us, then we're going to put it into our county constitution that if you want to build urban development in a rural area where no services exist and taxpayer money is on the line, then you must earn a supermajority vote from the Board of County Commissioners. Because it's not the developer that's picking up the paycheck. We have a $22 billion deficit in our county. The reason we have that deficit and the reason we talk about raising our taxes on people is because we have not grown sustainably. Therefore, I submitted the rural boundary in an effort to conserve our resources and to apply our taxpayer money in the areas that matter most to give us the best return on investment. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Next question, there is a second issue that goes somewhat hand in hand with the rural boundary. Do you support the additional effort to limit annexations of unincorporated areas that might affect the rural boundary? Why or why not? And that's an issue that directly affects voters in Winter Park, where the city is at times looking to expand and grow, as are others across the county. And I think we were going to start with Mr. Montilla, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. I think the discussions that we're having are reflective on the work that goes into the code and our code and our charter. And so I think understanding the will of the people, I think there's got to be a balancing, because as it happened in East Orange, and we're hearing the annexation with the city of Orlando has a lot of the voters upset because they didn't have a voice in that regard. And so for me, I do believe there's got to be a balancing act when it comes to municipalities and working with municipalities, and obviously addressing the needs that we have with affordability. So I am about listening to the voice of the people overall, but everything revolves around the work into the code. And so the idea is that I'm for it as long as the resources that we're doing to put that forth is balanced with the needs of the folks who don't have a voice in those regions. Thank you.
Dr. Semrad.
Thank you. Yes, I support the annexation. It's actually the second part of the rural boundary that I submitted last July 2023. So when we had it at the CRC, we could have two issues in that amendment. The first was to establish the boundary to make sure we spend our resources in our urban core area. And the second is that in case of annexation from a municipality, particularly the city, that the rules of the land would transfer with the annexation. So if we have lands in unincorporated Orange County that are part of the rural boundary, and it's annexed, then we want to ensure that we are still respecting those rural communities that are there and that the rules of the land transfer. But in addition, you have to remember, every time we annex, it impacts our tax base as county residents. So it ends up impacting all of our quality of life, and it's something that is very significant. It's something that we're standing up against, and we're saying that enough is enough with the irresponsible growth and development. It's time to put the residents' vision first and to develop in a sustainable fashion. Yes, I support the annexation, and it's necessary if we would like Vision 2050, which is our county's new comprehensive land use plan, to work. And yes, it's necessary if we ever want a mass transit system that will work. And yes, it's necessary if we want to solve our affordable housing crisis. So it's time we draw a line, and it's time that we put some teeth behind that policy, which is what I reference as the annexation portion of it. Thank you.
I too agree with the annexation part of it. It's essential that we have that part of it with the rural boundary amendment. Unfortunately, it came to the part where the county was having to jump in because the cities were doing this annexation, and then the county was left trying to figure out infrastructure problems and water problems, flooding, as we know. So yes, I am definitely for the annexation part. Thank you.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into transportation, and this one hits home in Winter Park as well. A lot of folks know that the Sunrail stop here in Winter Park is among the most successful and most frequently used along the entire rail line. Unfortunately, next door in Maitland, the statistics aren't so good. It's one of the least used stops. And as a lot of folks know, Orange County and Orlando, Maitland, Winter Park are now being asked to pay even more for Sunrail. We all knew that the bill for Sunrail would eventually come due, and that time is now. So for the system to reach its full potential, there's likely going to be even more expenses. One of those is talked about extension to Orlando International Airport. Should Sunrail continue to be funded now that the burden is on local taxpayers? And if so, how? And I believe that we go to Mr. Montilla. No, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Yes, I believe that Sunrail should continue to be funded. The interesting thing about my campaign, though, is how I intend to fund it. We have a tourism industry. It's the best in the entire nation. 75 million tourists come here a year. I'm a tourism expert, and I function off of tourism economies. One of the reasons I earned the Orlando Sentinel endorsement today was for my tourism expertise and being able to apply that here. When we talk about mass transit and Sunrail, it should be funded by the tourism industry. It should be coming off of tourism impact fees. It's a vehicle that's going to increase the economic impact of every single tourist that's here. If the tourist has the ability to get to the Springs, if they have the ability to get to Maitland, Winter Park, Baldwin Park, they will go. They want to experience our local economy, and they will spend money along the way. The problem is that we can't get iDrive to separate and give those tourists throughout the rest of the county. And so I'm pushing really hard at the tourism industry to say that if we want to remain the best tourism industry in the world, then we need to have some changes. Those changes must include a mass transit system that's going to move the 75 million tourists around, get them off our roads, as well as enhance and improve our quality of life. So the funding mechanism of that should be shifted, not from public tax-paying money. That's not the way this is done in other places. It's time for change. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I agree, when I was on Maitland City Council, that was something that we were really concerned about, because I got on there after they had already decided where the station was gonna be. We were thinking it should have been in the downtown more, because it's a little bit of a walk to the, it's not that bad of a walk, but it's enough to keep people from using it as much. But that decision was made already, and then we were worried about how are we gonna keep this funded. So I agree that this could be something that would be considered a tourist-used transportation, and we should put money from the tourist development tax towards anything that has to do with tourists. I think that the Sunrail is very important because there's a lot of people that depend on it now to get to work. They're using it to get to the healthcare facility, and they're also, I just recently found out that people can get to the airport by taking a bus from another stop. So I was really excited to hear about that, and I'm gonna find out more about it and put it out on my social media, because I think that's what we need. We need somehow to get to the airport from Sunrail until we can get the Sunrail actually going to the airport. Thank you.
Yes, to the first part, it should continue to be fun, but anything that affects the voters, especially those on a fixed income, I'm very cautious about. I believe the ideas that are shared tonight are viable options. As I said before, my goal in my campaign is to amplify the work that's been done. And doing a little bit of research and talking to the constituents and stakeholders, Mayor Demings put together a Housing for All task force. And this is as a result, as many of those in this room may remember, we're still reeling from a 2008 crisis and a recession and then the 2020 pandemic. So these are very daunting tasks. And I believe the task that has already started to address these issues in addition to the ideas that were shared tonight is headed in the right direction when it comes to, you can't talk about transportation of Sunrail without talking about the housing and where we move and how we move people to and from. So I will lean into that. I'm very cautious as to anything that affects the taxpayers, as I mentioned, on a fixed income. But I'm not opposed to continuing the work that the task force has done and mirroring a lot of the work that they've done and brought to the table already through public and private partnerships. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what I'm taking away from your responses is there does seem to be some support. I'm sorry. I think what I'm taking away from the responses is that there does seem to be some support for potentially reallocating TDT, which we saw a report again today is continuing at record levels here in Orange County. So in order to distinguish yourselves for the voters, give us something specific you would do to actually get there logistically, if that's the position you take. So let's, and I'm sorry, I'm not doing the order very well. Yes.
Okay, logistically, yes,
Yes.
that is going to be the problem. The people that control where that money goes are very not wanting to give up any of it. I know that firsthand from when running for the Florida House and being interviewed by the people who control it, and if you don't give them the right answer, which is don't touch it, then they say, okay, we're not supporting you. So I think it's gonna take a lot of work, working with shareholders, stakeholders, and convincing them this is what we need to do. And I read that article today about the record numbers of money coming in, and that's a reason right there why we need to use that money for something like Sunrail, where we don't have to take more money from the everyday taxpayer. So that would be what I would do.
Logistically, I think as we serve as commissioners or any layer of government, you have to have community engagement. You have to community involvement and community buy-in. And so I think logistically, starting that point where you engage about the solutions that the community wants to see. When you're talking about areas like this, again, the municipalities, there's got to be that collaboration with the duly elected body, because City of Winter Park has their duly elected body, and so they're facing the same issues in terms of moving people around. But what I've heard overwhelmingly is the activation, the education, to educate the voters exactly what's at stake here, what the issues are. Also empower the voters and engage with them to come up with the solutions, and also to have voter approval. Many of these ideas that get hashed out are rejected by the voters because they don't feel like they're part of the process. And so for me, logistically, it's going to be a key important factor to include the voters and the residents in the decision-making process, in addition to state and federal stakeholders to come up with these solutions. That's how I would approach this through. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just really want to emphasize first and foremost, a primary reason why I'm running in this race is because I believe wholeheartedly in diversifying those funds. So it's not just some support from me, it's wholehearted, I'm running for it. At least one of the reasons. Logistically, how are we going to get this to work? One of the exciting things about my campaign, again, I'm endorsed by the majority of the Orange County legislative delegation. That includes Anna Escamani, Carlos Guillermo Smith, and Maxwell Frost. And what we are doing, we are all aligned in the diversification of these funds. We're looking at legislative changes within the state of Florida in terms of how we can use these funds. Logistically speaking, my job as a commissioner is to get the money. I have to get the money out of the TDT. After that, I'm not a transportation expert. I cannot tell you where the best stops are going to be, but I believe we have the talent in Orange County across public-private partnerships in order to determine where those best stops might be. I'll tell you, as a tourism expert around the world, one of the most important lessons that I have learned is how you collaborate and how you work across different party lines, different ideologies, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and different levels of industry stakeholders. I'm so proud to have been a part of so many different tourism master plans around the world where we have a successful mass transit system because we were able to facilitate those connections and those partnerships. Thank you.
All right, so switching gears a little bit, several of you have mentioned housing as a major issue in Orange County, attainable housing, and of course, where housing is built when we're talking about new home starts. And that really aligns with another major issue, which I think a few of you have mentioned, which is wages. And we know Central Florida has among the lowest wages in the nation. And a lot of you who have maybe lived in Winter Park or Central Florida for a while know that some almost 20 years ago now, we saw a major effort by Orange County commissioners, hand in hand with our state administration, to diversify wages by investing heavily in biotechnology. A lot of those efforts fizzled, some were successful, some fizzled. We saw a lot of talk about incentives, a lot of money was handed out, some jobs were created. In some cases, the companies did not live up to expectations. And here we are today in 2024, and tourism is still the key industry here in Central Florida. So if you're elected day one, what would you bring to the table in terms of a fresh perspective, a fresh idea to truly diversify wages on the ground here in Central Florida? And we are starting with Mr. Montilla.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you. So when we speak about wages, a little fun fact about me is I actually was in the hospitality industry for 7 or 8 years. I started out as a busboy and I served tables, and so I've seen the challenges that there are when it comes to wages. I've been homeless a few times, I didn't have my vehicle. So I understand firsthand as a front row seat of the challenges. In terms of diversifying, I mentioned earlier the recession and then subsequently the pandemic. And we all saw when the pandemic hit, how we were hit as an industry. So it's of more importance for me as a commissioner to diversify that. We have an excellent simulation corridor out by UCF. We have a great defense out by UCF. And so the idea is to balance that out and not be so dependent on that industry that could cripple us in the event of another pandemic. And so first order of business is to correlate and collaborate with those stakeholders, like as I mentioned before, and to find ways to diversify our economy so that we're not so dependent on just the tourism industry. Thank you.
Dr. Semrad.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to say that I want to also talk about not just diversifying jobs in the economy, but also sustaining a really important economic sector of Orange County, which is agriculture. And we think that agriculture is just about the farmer, and that there's not good paying jobs there. There are a lot of STEM-related jobs in actually agriculture these days. But we can't grow local if we only have subdivisions. So conserving some of that land helps us diversify our economy by leaving space for the agricultural industry. Secondly, I would like to say that the tourism industry, they apply each year for tourism development tax funds. I would like to see a change in the scorecard of how these companies come and organizations and ask for money. I believe that if you're asking for public money, taxpayer money, you should be paying a livable wage job. And if you're not, I think that's a desk rejection. It should not be considered, because it's all of us in this room that end up picking up the cost of those social services to support the people who do not work livable wage jobs. So we need our tourism industry to be held accountable. We have the lowest wages in the country, and it's hard for me to say that the industry I advocate for internationally, I cannot support locally. And it's time for us to look for STEM jobs. It's time for us to support STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to diversify and provide those opportunities. And we need to push back on the industry that has eroded our local economy. Thank you.
When I was running for Maitland and at the House, I was very much for bringing the film industry back to here to Florida. That was a missed opportunity when it went to Atlanta, and I really wanted it to come here. So I'm still looking for ways to bring the film industry back. Also, on Maitland City Council, we were constantly looking for ways to incentivize to get more businesses to come to our city. It was good for the tax base, and it was also good for great paying jobs. So that's something I have worked on in my 10 years of public service. We also, when I was in the Florida House, we put money towards workforce jobs and getting more plumbing and electricians, all those people that we need to come to our house, and they do make a lot of money, as you know, because we pay a lot of money when they come to our house. So thank you. I am all for trying to find better paying jobs and for helping our people who work in the tourist industry that are not being paid what they deserve. We need to support them and make it affordable for nurses and firefighters, policemen, all of our first responders and healthcare people to come here and be able to afford to live. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to change topics now to preemption. It has been raised a couple times. And we are seeing more and more preemption from the state legislature every single year. That's something that's really relevant to people who live in a city like Winter Park and take the time to learn who's running for office in Winter Park, elect people to represent them, and then find out that those folks aren't able to do their jobs because the state legislature has decided against it. And so I'm curious, and this of course affects the county level as well. Everybody knows the leaf blowers, right, in Winter Park. That was the latest example of preemption where no matter what side of that issue you might have been on, you might have a bone to pick about the person you elected not being able to make that decision and someone else in Tallahassee overriding you. So curious how this panel of candidates would go about addressing preemption. I know various groups, the Association of Counties and the League of Cities have talked about this issue, but what would you specifically do as an elected official to deal with that. And I think we have Dr. Semrad first, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. So I'm very familiar with preemption because I was a citizen that was highly engaged in the right to clean water, which was preempted by the state. I was a citizen who was very highly engaged in safe split oak forest, which we are still fighting, preempted by FWC and other government entities. We were also just preempted with the rural boundary, where we were handcuffed and we could not get that through our Charter Review Commission. Instead, we had to go to the Board of County Commissioners and ask for them to put it on our ballot because the state preempted us. So preemption happens when special interest is stepping in to basically authoritate how they want to see us governed. I don't think that is anything that is a secret. I think it's something that we have to start calling out. And I believe that as an elected official, one of the ways to address it is you know what the spirit was of the ordinance or the policy that the people were trying to pass. So you should live it, you should breathe it into every decision that you make for that community, is to honor the vote of what the people were trying to achieve. And that's what I stand for. I'm standing up. I will be the most accessible commissioner you have ever had, the hardest working, and I'm coming to bring the vision and the voice of the people to Orange County Chambers. Thank you.
So when I served in the Florida House, I was on one of the committees that actually saw a lot of these preemption bills. And the way it's set up is they purposely make it where there is a minority of people that are going to vote against the preemption bill. And every single one of these bills, it didn't matter what people said or who came up to talk in front of us, they would pass. The way to get it not to pass is to develop relationships with these other people that are across the aisle. And what's great about this is a lot of them are people that would be serving locally, or they used to serve locally, or they know or have really great relationships with people who are serving locally. So they need to make sure that we are working together, and I would be willing to even go to Tallahassee and help lobby to stop some of these preemption bills, the ones that affect Orange County specifically. A lot of times they get taken off, they don't make it through the committee because there is so much local people saying no to these preemption bills. So we all have to work together. It doesn't help just to say we're against them. We have to convince these people that are trying to preempt our local government that this isn't a good idea and it's affecting them and their neighbors as well. Thank you.
Good question. So I'm a first-time candidate. Can you hear me? Can you hear me better? You can hear me better? Okay. I'll try to talk a little louder. So I think the preemption that we're seeing is what a lot of the folks like me who've never ran before is the discord. Is, as I mentioned before, preemption is a Florida statute, and so there's a lot of density and complexity as it relates to being able to present something that folks that may disagree could work with you. And so I believe there seems to be a kickback, which ultimately it affects the voters because this is on taxpayer dollars, the back and forth. So right, you submit something that's incomplete, you submit something that you just want to get it out, not thoroughly, not vetted, through the law, through the code, and so that you get this back and forth, which at the end of the day, many folks in this room end up paying for. So I believe the preemption has to be taken a look with skillful eye, and also understanding the exact correlation between case law, code, and Florida statute to present something that can be workable. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone in the audience for submitting questions. There's some really good ones in the stack, so I want to get to a few of those before we run out of time. And again, this is a largely Winter Park-based audience. This is a city that cares very much about arts and culture. There's a lot of excellent amenities here. How do you all feel about how arts and culture plays into the county and county support to assist those groups, I think is the question, and the local economy? And I'm sorry. Yes. And I think Representative Goff-Marcil is next.
Such a gentleman, letting me go first. Well, I'm from this area. The house that I grew up in was actually cut Winter Park one side, Maitland on one side. I used to say that I ate in Winter Park and slept in Maitland. So if you hear me say I'm from Winter Park and you sometimes hear I'm saying from Maitland, I'm not lying. This is true. So I've also been living in Maitland a long time. We have the Maitland Art Center, which is amazing. And Winter Park, of course, has so many amazing arts areas. So I am very supportive of that. And what exactly was the question? Or that I'm very supportive of that.
I'm sorry. So the question is, how can the county, and how do arts and culture and how can the county support and assist those groups and the local economy?
Well, the county should, and of course they had to step in because the state took away so much of our funding. So it's very important for the county. It's great. It's going to bring in more dollars than any dollars that we spend. It's going to bring in way more dollars. So definitely, thanks.
Thank you, good question. Another fun fact about me, the arts actually saved my life. When I was younger, I had a gift for drawing. And it was the only thing that got me, to really focus on my studies and really focus on channeling my adolescence, as many of us were. So I think it's important to understand the leaders in our community who are spearheading those initiatives and exactly the needs that they have and the purpose that they serve. But I think in terms of funding the creative outlet for our communities, it is a priority and it's utmost importance in addition to the diversification that we give to our community overall. And it holds a special place in my heart because I said before I was headed to college on a drawing scholarship and I chose to get into cheerleading instead. So that's a different story from me. It holds a place in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that I look at is, of course, I'm a tourism expert. I look at different spending receipts across different sectors. One of the best performing sectors is cultural and heritage tourism. You can't have culture and tourism heritage without having your art products. So I believe that we should be looking at our tourist development tax money, and we actually do. We fund a lot of it with our arts. I believe we need to be doing more. This is a sector that is underperforming across all of Orange County. And if you talk to tourists, they'll actually say, I'm so surprised at the culture and the art and the heritage that was in Orlando. I thought it was just all theme parks. So it's an undertapped market that we can access that's right here, that adds value to our life, that makes local living something you can be proud of. I believe we should be investing in our arts, we should be supporting it, and our tourism industry should be helping fund it by looking at diversification of the cultural tourism receipts that begin to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. This is another audience question, and I should add, this is a question that whoever is elected will need to vote directly on, likely at some point. Do you support increasing the size of the Orange County Convention Center?
So I've heard a lot of, I've walked the district multiple times, and the short answer is not whether other pressing needs. And I think our community is a lot of priorities that are going ignored in terms of getting to that point where you're going to be voting on something that may be $500 million. And so I think that I'm not closed off to the dialogue and the conversation. As I understand, there's many jobs that depend on that industry, and they're opening up Epic Universe. However, I do believe ultimately that there's room to improve that. Thank you so much.
Circle back to Dr. Semrad, is that correct?
No, I do not support a convention center expansion. I want to talk about some statistics. Thank you. 75% increase in homelessness since 2019. 10,000 school-aged children in Orange County Public Schools that didn't have a permanent address. When we look at the statistics, the lowest wages in the nation, by the way, broken roads, you guys. We've got roads that by 2030, 70% of them are anticipated to be failing. A $22 billion deficit. The writing is on the wall for the direction of which that we're going. So no, I do not support a convention center expansion. We have so many other needs. And on top of that, the industry, although they say this is a great economic bracket to bring in, it costs us money. It's losing money. Its occupancy rates are poor. It's not good. It's the second largest in the entire country. It's time that we put our revenue into places where we're going to get the biggest return on investment for our money. Thank you.
I don't usually say how I'm gonna vote until I hear all of I am an attorney, so I like to hear all the evidence, pro and con, why we should do what we're gonna do. And I have not heard a good reason why we should put all that money into the convention center. I've heard a lot of arguments why we should not, but not why we should. So if you were gonna make me vote on that right now, I would say no. Thanks.
Okay, next question. What is your position on a dedicated funding source for public transportation? We hit on some of this a little bit earlier, and I think I wanna, if I may, add a little liberty here to the question author, whoever that may be. I think we want to clarify that there's a bunch of different pots of money we're talking about tonight. One is the tourism development tax, that's a levy on hotel beds, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, but we all know that voters rejected a proposed sales tax increase for transportation, and that was just a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And there's been talk about bringing that back. So far, that I don't believe has made it back to the ballot. But so we've got potential increasing people's sales tax. We've got maybe changing the way we spend the tourist development tax. But what else could happen so that Lynx is finally the recipient of a dedicated funding source? And I say Lynx, but I think Sunrail and some other mass transit would be part of that as well. Let's see, yes, Joy.
And make sure I understand the question. You're
So
saying,
what's your the question is, what is your position on a dedicated funding source for public transportation? So I take that to mean, should there be one, and where do we find it?
is this not the one that we were gonna put on the ballot, or are you asking about the one that we were gonna put on the ballot?
Well, I think that's probably one option, right? I mean, there's a sales tax, there's tourism development tax, there's a lot of pots of money, so to speak, that the county potentially has access to. So how do we get the job done when, if the goal is to fund public transit, how does that happen?
Well, there is the tourist development tax that we've been talking about as a possibility, and especially when it has to do with public transit of our tourists, and we can argue that the tourists are going to our cities, Malin Winter Park and all of our other cities, to go to our arts and our cultural centers and our parks. And so there's that. And then I would also be in favor of putting the transportation tax back on the ballot. I know it failed the last time, but I think that if we can get the word out to educate the voters on where it's going exactly, so they know exactly where it's gonna go, because they're not gonna wanna pay for it if it's just making the road bigger and less safe. I'm all about walkability and safety, and we need to make sure that everyone knows where this money is going before we vote for it. And what I like about the tax as well is that a lot of it's gonna come from our tourists, the sales tax, because we have so many tourists. Thanks.
Thank you. Such a loaded question. But given the minute constraint, I'd say if you haven't checked it out yet, check out the presentation that the League of Women Voters did last June. excellent presentation. I think it goes into specifics into that. I think with stakeholders and the individuals who are involved with it, I believe that the voters rejected it, so I stand with the voters. If it's the same language, I'll stand with the voters. So again, voter collaboration and input and voter buy-in is going to be very, very important. But I'm not opposed to tapping into the tourism development tax dollars, and not opposed, according to the voters at the door, with that penny sales tax, so long as there is community buy-in for that purpose and alleviating the congestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Semrad.
Thank you. Yes, I support a dedicated funding source for our mass transit system. I was actually a citizen who was very engaged in the process of looking at the sales tax increase last time, very critical of it. And what I found out is that we were dedicating a lot to roadway widening projects. And I'll tell you what, I'm a person, I do not support roadway widening projects. If you increase it, they will break it. You increase it again, they will break it. It's a waste of our taxpayer money. What I do support is funding a mass transit system that will get vehicles off of the road, get our tourists off of the road. How are we going to look at funding that? Again, we're going to come back on the tourism industry. 75 million people are here a year. One of the exciting things that the Charter Review Commission talked about this year was a TransMac. And that is going to be a group of people that's going to oversee what happens, what are the projects that the transportation sales tax increase would go to. Thank you.
Okay, this is another audience question, and I hope this gives you all a chance to maybe raise some issues that we haven't touched on so far tonight, if those are important to you. What are your top, and I know you only have a minute, so I know this is hard, but what are your top 3 objectives that you hope to accomplish should you be elected to the Orange County Commission? And we're gonna start with that was gonna be my first guess.
Thank you. My top 3 objectives that I'm looking at accomplishing coming in. We must have a local economy that is working for us. It is not right now. The lowest wages in the nation, increasing homeless rates, unaffordable living. And I tell you what, I have little kids, and I'm also an educator. And what I fear is that we are outpricing our next generation. You all are probably grandparents, and guess what's happening in the next generation coming up? They're saying, Mom, Dad, I can't afford to live here anymore. And so they're leaving. And so what we're beginning to look at is basically exporting our next generation. So I'm standing up against special interests, and my number 1 goal that I'm doing is I'm bringing your voice to the county commissioner. I am the only one refusing special interest donations because I believe they have nowhere in local politics. I believe that in local politics we all have similar issues, and I believe that I am the most qualified to represent those. Thank you.
It's so many issues to bring it down to 3. We've got growth, overwhelming growth in Orange County, and that is causing a lot of our problems. Affordability, that's huge. That's why our property insurance is going up, and it's because of the growth, and we're having more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. So I would say I would want to make sure that we are making sure our growth is not urban sprawl, that we are concentrating our density in the core. That will solve a lot of our problems. And it will also help with affordability, which means that we might have to do some zoning changes or something to make sure that we are developing in the core. And that also will help traffic if we can get more of the people in the core where we can. And we talked about the public transit, we need to work on that. But there's just so many issues, but they all stem from growth, and we have to protect our environment foremost because we have to have clean water. Thanks.
Thank you. One of my priorities is understanding, many of those are in this room. We have senior citizens, and we have 10,000 senior citizens retiring a day. So I think that's gonna be a big challenge for us as far as a lot of the topics that we talked about here tonight. So I do think that our senior citizens is a priority of mine. I actually bring in the commission to the people through technology. Many of you in this room know telehealth, and that's accessible in the post-COVID world. Not sure why they couldn't be telegovernment. So those are two, and then obviously the environment and making sure that we are adapting to the growing changes that we've had in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question before we move into our closing statements. And I wanted to get to quickly, and this issue has become really complicated, and I've been following it for a few years, but what is the first step, if any step, that you would take to address the Split Oak Forest Road that's now, I believe, moving forward? But the issue's a little confusing to me because I know that the county attempted to stop that project. So what would you do on that issue? What's your position on that issue, and what would you do if there's a tangible action that you would want to take?
I am in support of protecting the Split Oak Forest. We are having roadblocks, of course, because now the Osceola County has approved the road through Split Oak. So this means we more than ever need to work with our neighboring county and convince them that this is not the right decision. There's too many environmentally sensitive lands in Split Oak, and the mitigation that they've offered us is not acceptable. So I am firmly willing to work to protect Split Oak.
Yes, Split Oak Forest, the road is moving forward through the forest from what I understand. So Orange County does have a say in the matter. What would you do what's your position on the proposed road?
So I'm all about protecting Florida's most precious resources is our environment. And I think that the Orange County Commission needs to honor its commitment to protect those kind of areas and understand exactly what part of the code and the statutes allow that to happen and challenge it. And so for me, I'm all about protecting the most precious assets that we have, which is our trees, our water, our land. And not only that, but going back to the codes and the complexities of precedent and case law, because a lot of the stuff that's being hashed out in the court sets the precedent. And so it gets flashed out. And so understanding that exactly and what's in favor and what areas I have won and mirror those as well. So I'm all about protecting our natural environment and Split Oak as well. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 years ago, I was very engaged in the charter amendment to save Split Oak Forest. 86% of us voted to protect that forest. This is not just about environmental conservation. This is about elected officials honoring a promise where they used our taxpayer money to purchase conservation land, to sustain that land, to relocate endangered species to that land. And when developers said, oh, we need a new road, Split Oak Forest is a great place to put it. No, it's not. And we're not dead yet. We are still alive. The community is still fighting. It's getting harder each time we get a bad vote, but we're still fighting and we're still alive. And I want to tell you what, on this November ballot, what we see is a movement from Split Oak Forest. There is now going to be a supermajority requirement if you want to rezone conservation land. This is an issue of, again, special interest, mega developers drowning out the will of the people. Land that was left to us in perpetuity. And I want to tell you what, perpetuity means forever. Thank you.
And we're going to, it's time now to move into closing statements from all of you. And once again, thank you for being here and answering so many questions. And Mr. Montilla, we're going to start with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, 2 minutes, excuse me.
Thank you, folks. As I started, when I first started that, my first time candidate, I sat on the sidelines and watched what's going on and lived the experiences. As I mentioned before, the transportation and the housing, we moved around. My family and I moved around to 4 different high schools in 1 year. So I've lived a lot of the things that we're talking about today. and I bring the skill sets as a lawyer and the business that I do in the graduation I have from UCF to the table and understanding the complexity that is code and a lot of these decisions that gets made today. I represent, and it's my opinion that I represent what the other candidates represent individually. I have a collective effort into my campaign. I've lived in the unincorporated areas. I currently live in the incorporated areas, and I understand the need to amplify the voices and champion the movements that exist. Commissioners give you 4 years, maybe 8, and a lot of the issues that we talked about tonight have been going on for a while. And I think what that exemplifies is lack of true leadership and bipartisan support, and to understand that you have to have a collaborative effort. The best guy for the job, I understand it. The very same people that we're speaking about tonight, I am just that. I work with many of those that are in this room, and I understand the challenges that are played. But more importantly, it's not so much about me and my campaign, it's about the voices in you all. And the idea is to bring that and champion the individuals in the communities who've been working and will continue to work once the commission changes over. I believe the last 2 commissioners have represented different interests, and my commission is going to represent both in a balance in between. It would be an honor to serve as the next county commissioner. You can visit our websites and talk to us afterwards. Thank you for your time.
I'm the hometown candidate from Winter Park in Maitland. I understand the unique character of our cities, how wonderful they are, and the unique character of our neighbors, such as College Park and Audubon Park and Thornton Park and Colonial Town, and we just have so many great communities around here, and I just want to serve on the Orange County Commission and keep making those communities great. Now, of course, we would be representing everyone in the whole county, and we need to try to bring affordability down so people can come to our county, to first responders, nurses, teachers, our tourist industry workers. They all need to be able to afford to live, work, and play in our county. So that is something I want to work on the county commission. And of course, what's near and dear to my heart is the environment. What I've worked on at the city level and at the state level to protect our environment, to make sure that developers are not developing in our wetlands like they were doing in Maitland, and we stop them. And we need to do that at the county level. It's very important. We need to work on our traffic infrastructure. We have to make sure that our police officers have the resources they need when they make their first responding calls. They need to have mental health workers with them, because a lot of the calls that they make are people that are in distress, in mental health distress. They do not need a gun pointed at them. So I hope to have your vote. My website is joyforfl.com. You can check me out more, find me afterwards. Like I said, I live right down the street in Maitland, and I love this community. I want to work for this community, and I appreciate all the support I've had in the 10 years that I've been your public servant. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to us. Beth, thank you. League of Women Voters in Westminster. I have not sat on the sidelines to watch and see what's happening in our local community. For the last decade, I have been a tourism expert that is at the county chambers advocating to put people first in a tourism industry where we see that corporations are winning and the people are struggling. I've been there. In terms of development, I'm the vice chair of Save Orange County. I have been in that commission just advocating for people from District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, fighting and saying that the people have the right to have the vision of growth. I've been there advocating for mass transit, for natural resource conservation. I have a special, unique skill set. I am the only tourism expert. Not am I just a tourism expert here, but internationally, I'm known for it. I have the skill set to be able to work across all different people, all different groups, to be able to build an industry that works for us, that works for our next generation, where we begin to look at roads that are no longer broken, an infrastructure that doesn't have a deficit. I'm standing up and I'm pushing back. I'm a tenured professor at UCF. It's not easy to get there. but I'm putting my community first, and I'm saying that it is time that the people come first in Orange County politics, and it doesn't matter where we come from in District 5. I am standing up for all of us. I am going to be the most accessible commissioner that you have had. I am going to be boots on the ground knocking on your door saying, how best can we serve you? I believe in this community. I believe we're going in the wrong direction, but I also know that we can turn it around by electing the right people, and I am that person for this job. Please visit kellysemrad.com for more information. I am going to be here as long as you would like to chat. My number is on all of my brochures. You have me. I am here to serve. Thank you.
Okay, yes, all the commissioners do have a table, including former Mayor Leary, who isn't with us tonight. He is represented out in the foyer for anyone who would like to stop by.
You gotta show up.
So I very much appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thank you so much to the candidates. So nice meeting you all. And I will say, please subscribe to the Winter Park Voice if you haven't already. It is free. Our content is out there for everybody. You can find us at winterparkvoice.com and Facebook, social media, etc. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Wasn't she great? And the candidates have made this a very hard choice, have they not? We want to, in the League of Women Voters of Orange County, just thank all of you for coming out. And I particularly like to thank Joan Irwin and Charlie Williams. If Joan and Charlie, if you can stand, for taking it on to make tonight happen. So thank you for your energy and commitment to get the candidate forum going for our August 20th primary, and we are pumped up. So please show up, vote, and make this happen. Adrienne, do you have another comment for us?
No, I just thank everybody for coming. We appreciate your responsive. It took a while to get it together, but we did it. And I thank Westminster for giving us the space, and we are a community. We're part of it. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening.